Would you please stand for the reading of our gospel for today? This is also our sermon text. The reading comes from Matthew's gospel, the 23rd chapter, verses 1 through 12. Matthew 23, 1 through 12. If you'd like to follow along in the Pew Bible, you'll find that beginning on page 25 in the Newer Testament. Matthew 23. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it. But do not do as they do. For they do not practice what they teach. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the shoulders of others. But they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. They love to have the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in synagogues, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and to have people call them Rabbi. But you are not to be called Rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all students. And call no one your father on earth, for you have one Father, the one in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted." This is the good news of our Lord Jesus, Messiah. Let the church hear what the Spirit is saying. Let us pray. Lord, as we seek to serve you, as we seek to be humble servants, come in these moments and show us your way. Give us a glimpse into your heart. Give us a glimpse into our own hearts, and thereby change us, transform us into the people you call us to be. And now, Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You be seated. The title of the sermon, of course, is a twist on the old Parents' Standby. If there were a parent's handbook, this would be in it. And we've all heard it. And if you're parents or teachers, you've probably said it. And it usually comes up when our children point out to us some inconsistencies in our lives. For me, it was things like, "Dad, I thought we weren't going to get angry at the other drivers on the highway. I thought we were supposed to be patient." And we say, "Well, do as I say, don't do as I do." And we know when we say it that they don't believe it. They know that they see, they know that we know that they see through us. We know, so we smile and we laughingly say things like this. But children are smart. They understand when parents are not being consistent. There's sort of an innate sense of fairness born into children, I think. We learn to be cheaters later. But children, they want things to be fair. And if we say one thing and do another, they'd like to point that out to us, and well, they should. But we as parents, we know that when we say things like that we're just being, well, let's call it what it is. We're being hypocrites. Jesus is talking talking about that kind of thing when he addresses the crowds in this gospel reading. He's talking about living consistent lives. And if there ever was an exemplar of a consistent life, it is Jesus. And so he has a right. He has a call. He has in his very nature, he has the ability to say these kinds of things and have us take them serious. Now, there is a danger in this 23rd chapter of Matthew. And we need to be aware of it. A lot of Christians historically have used this chapter as a way to express an inherent superiority of Christianity over Judaism. And it has become the basis for a lot of anti-Semitic thinking. And that is an unfortunate thing. That's more than unfortunate. It's sad. It's wrong. And I would not have any of us leave here today thinking that Jesus, in this case, is condemning, denouncing his own people. He isn't doing that at all. He's not saying anything against the Jews or against their tradition generally. He's talking about some particular people, some leaders who have a calling, a responsibility to act and speak in certain ways, and they're belittling that. They're giving lie to what they have said. And we have to understand that. Remember that this comes at the end of a rather long section in which Jesus has been involved in a series of disputes with temple leaders. And he's been talking about different kinds of things that the evangelist has. He's been giving us different scenes in this moment. And this is in the last week of Jesus' ministry. Remember, he's come into Jerusalem. And he's gone into the temple. And people have challenged him. Temple leaders have challenged him on his authority. And the players in all of these scenes are generally the same group of players. Jesus and his followers, the crowds, and the temple leaders. Chief priests, elders, scribes, lawyers, Pharisees, and Sadducees. And this question of authority runs through it all. People have come to challenge Jesus in his authority. And when we come to this text for today, Jesus isn't addressing any of those people. So he's not directly addressing any of those people who have challenged his authority. He's addressing the crowds and his followers, his disciples. And he says, listen to the scribes and Pharisees and do everything that they teach you to do. This is not what we expect, probably. We probably expect Jesus to denounce them altogether, but he recognizes the authority that the scribes and the Pharisees have because of their calling. They have instruction, they have learned, they have given themselves to knowing and understanding God's instruction, and to being teachers of God's instruction. And Jesus says that they sit in Moses' seat. Now, that's not to say, obviously, that they are lawgivers, as Moses was the great lawgiver in Jewish history. But they are people who have studied the law and know the law. They know what it means to live in relationship with God. And Jesus says they have authority, and you need to act in ways that show due deference to them. Give them the respect that they are due. Treat them with honor for their experience and their knowledge. Listen to them, and whatever they tell you to do, do it. But don't do as they do. Oh no, don't do that. Because while they say the right things, they're doing something different. They talk about praising God and glorifying God, but it's always they who are in the spotlight. They talk about the burden of responsibility that they have, the onus of authority, They talk about the weight that they bear as teachers of God's instruction. And then they put extra burdens on the people and are unwilling to lift a finger to help. They want all the best seats in the banquets and the first row of the synagogue. Well, they're not Baptists, sorry. They want all the glory that they can get. They want the ringside seats at the boxing matches and the front row seats at the basketball games. And they want to sit behind the plate at the baseball games, so every time you see the batter on television, you're looking right at them. They want to be the center of attention. They want to be the focus. Regardless of what they say, what they do shows something different. But Jesus is not criticizing them for their knowledge or for their experience. He is not criticizing them for their tradition, which he upholds. Not a single mark in the Scripture will pass away, Jesus says. I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. He is not denying the authority of the scribes and the Pharisees. He's denying their actions, because their actions are not consistent with what they teach. It isn't because of their tradition that they do this. It's because they're human. It's because they are living human beings. We all want that, don't we? Don't we want people to think well of us? Don't we want people to listen when we speak? Don't we want, at times at least, to be the center of attention? It's nice. It feels good. It makes us feel happy and satisfied. So Jesus is not criticizing the scribes and Pharisees for their words, but for their attitudes and actions. And we would like to think, perhaps, that these words really are meant to focus on this group probably wouldn't like that. We don't want to focus on who they are as leaders of the tradition of the Jews. But if we think of them in terms of their office, then in some ways that removes us a step from hearing those words of Jesus for ourselves. And he goes on to say, you see, they want to be called rabbi. They want people to give them the proper greetings in the marketplaces. They want everybody to recognize who they are. But they're not rabbis. They're students. And that's what you should call them. You should call them students. And further, we're all students. And you shouldn't call anyone on earth your father or your mother, because only God in heaven is that eternally loving, divine, holy, empathetic, compassionate, merciful, gracious parent. And you shouldn't call anyone instructor, certainly not those people, because you have one instructor, the Messiah. And then completely turns the tables on the scribes and the Pharisees. Anyone who is the greatest among you will be your servant. Not good news if you're a scribe or a Pharisee. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Jesus speaks these words to leaders in all ages, in all times, in all places. He speaks it to political leaders as well as religious leaders. He speaks it to leading thinkers and trendsetters in society. And he's saying to them, you have a responsibility not simply to say the right things, but to do the right things. You have a responsibility not just to be a figurehead, but actually to embody what they're saying. And these words are a warning, and leaders of all generations should heed them, should listen to them. We don't have to look very far to find contemporary illustrations of what Jesus says, do we? How often can you pick up a newspaper or watch a news program on television without seeing some new scandal of a political leader who has taken bribes or who has benefited personally from his or her position? That's what they do. It's a very human thing to do. Our television programs and movies are full of stories of criminals who have judges and legislators in their pockets. You don't have to look far. Stories of preachers who abuse their power, abuse their authority over congregations for their own personal gain, financially, sexually. It happens. All of these kinds of things that Jesus spoke of to the crowds and to his disciples, they still go on. And leaders need to be aware that they're called to live lives that are consistent. They're called to live so that people can do as they say and as they do. But it goes further, you see, because those words come to us as well. We may not be leaders in the same sense the politicians of our day and the pastors of great churches of our day. We may not be people of power and authority in all situations in our lives. But still, as followers of Jesus, our lives should be, can be, consistent. When people look at us, they should be able to see that our words and our deeds dovetail. They line up. They fit like pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. It's hard, though, isn't it? And why is it so funny when parents say, "Don't do as I do, do as I say"? It's so funny because we are, all of us, at some level, high or low, we are all of us hypocritical about something. All of us. You, me, all of us. And the wonderful thing about Jesus as our example is that we don't have to be that way. Right? We don't have to be hypocritical about anything. Our lives can be consistent. Now, please understand, I don't want you to feel too bad about being hypocritical in a lot of cases. I don't want you to feel too bad about being human. We're all of us in the same situation. But for those who are followers of Jesus Messiah, there is hope. He is the example for us, the exemplar. He shows us that it is possible, that it can happen, that our lives can be consistent, that our lives can be to the world examples not only of what we say, but of what we do. So we can say to our children and our friends and our students and our employees and our colleagues, we can say, "Do as I say, and as I do." We can say it, and we can mean it. Jesus says to us those very words, "Do as I say and as I do." And in hearing those words, in hearing those words alone, there is hope and there is life for us all. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you that you show us the way. We thank you that in Jesus we have an exemplar. We thank you that in Jesus we have a model. We thank you that in Jesus we have hope and power to choose and live lives of consistency. Fill us with your Spirit. Fill us with your grace. Help us to overcome the everyday hypocrisies of our lives, that we may serve you, serve your world. In Jesus' name, amen.